Stockinette. Today we're going to make a toque with the last bit of our Cascade eco wool that we used to make our cowl in the last video. I have a lot left even after this one, so you could probably make 2 toques out of it. So that's some good stuff. This toque hasn't been blocked yet, which is why it's rolling, but I'll tell you how to fix that at the end of the second part of this video. It's a simple toque knit on the round using magic loop, which is my favorite method to knit on the round with, thus I will teach you how to knit on the round with it. And we'll do some increasing and some decreasing and learn those essential things that we need to know to be awesome knitters. So what you'll need, again, is the rest of your Cascade eco wool from your cowl, size 10, circular needles, a tape measure, and a darning needle and some scissors. Tape measure is important because of this. You are going to be knitting by measurement. I'll give you a rough guide for how many stitches, but it's really good to know how to measure your knitting as you go because not everybody knits the same way. This one, I like to fold up the brim on it, but the brim on this one isn't too thick, so if you want a really thick brim, you might want to do 4 inches instead of 3 inches. The nice thing about this toque is that you can wear it slouchy, down, or you can wear it cuffed up. I'll show you what it looks like cuffed up. You can probably tell that the edges on this are rolling a little bit, but that's why we block it when we're done. So if you have all your stuff ready and your yarn, we will get started on the first half of our toque. So let's start casting on for our toque. Remember from the last video to set up for your wide tail cast on, we're going to pull our needle down. We've got our working end on our pointer finger and our non-working end on our thumb, and we're just going to scoop it up. Remember, we want our working end on our pointer fingers because the yarn that we scoop up, we need a lot more of it. And you're going to continue casting on as you do for 72 stitches. So I have my 72 stitches cast on. Now we're going to learn how to knit in the round using the magic loop method. I like this method. I find it a lot easier than carding around for double pointed needles, and I think it's a lot quicker in my personal opinion. So in order to set up for a magic loop cast on, we're going to divide our stitches in half. So you want to count out 36 stitches, 36. And you're going to pinch the middle of your circular needle, the little plastic bit, and pull. So it looks like that. Now, you're going to start off on the end that doesn't have the working yarn on it. You're going to push it onto your needle. In doing this, you want to check over your work and make sure that when you join it all together, that it isn't twisted. It's going to be a bit fumbly at first, but once you get started, it'll be a lot easier, I promise. Wrong side is matched up. They're all good. And pull that out a little bit. So take your working yarn, it's attached to your ball, and the brim of our toque is going to be all purl. So you're going to join it with purl stitch. And you're going to knit all purl stitches, as we did in the first video, going in through, making that X, wrap it around counterclockwise, and pull through. Now you're going to knit this for about 3 inches, so keep knitting, check with your tape measure until you reach about 3 inches. If you're knitting on the round with a smaller circular needle and you know that it's going to pop out either end, you want to place a marker where your row begins. But because we're doing magic loop, you should be knitting on a much longer circular needle. You shouldn't have that issue. So now we've knit to the end. Should look like that. We need to flip onto the other needle. So you're going to flip it around. You're going to take that loop, pull your needle, pull the needle you just were working on out, push your new needle in so that all the stitches are there. You have that loop again at the end so nothing can get onto any other needles where it doesn't belong. Just pull the loop off of your plastic bit to about where it's the same size as the other loops, and then purl. And you can pull that loop just a little bit tighter. We don't want any gaps. The nice thing about doing magic loop is that you don't get the ladders that you get from using double pointed needles. So knit to the end of the row. It'll be much easier once you have a couple rows on your needles. Okay, so now I'm almost at the end. 2 more stitches. And I have completed a full magic loop row. Just pull that plastic bit, push your new needle in, make sure nothing is twisted after a couple rows. It won't twist up anymore, but just make sure while you're knitting those first few foundation rows that nothing's twisted. Grab that end. If you want to use a marker, you can. It just slides around on me a lot. Nothing will pop out because your needle is so long. And we're just going to join up again for our second row. Pulling it just a little bit tighter and purling. So I'm at the midpoint of my second row. I'm going to purl these last 2 stitches. I'm going to flip, pull that loop, push my second needle in, and purl. And just pull that. You don't want it to be too tight, but it'll usually keep its own tension pretty well. Just don't tug on it or yard on it. And knit. So one more time, I'm at the beginning of my third row. I'm going to push that first needle in, make sure nothing's twisted up, grab my working yarn, and I'm going to purl. Now, you'll notice I don't have to knit. If I was doing this in stockinette, which we will do for the main part of the toque, the awesome thing about knitting on the round is that if you want it to be stockinette on one side, then all you have to do is do a knit stitch. If you want it to be reverse stockinette like we're doing, then you just need to do a purl stitch. If you wanted it to be garter stitch, then you would have to do a purl row, a knit row, a purl row, a knit row. If you're going to knit the cowl on the round that we just did, you'd have to do that to get your garter stitch, because we're not working back and forth, we're working on a continuous loop. So keep knitting that, like I said, for 3 inches to get the look that we're going for, and we'll come back and start our stockinette row and learn how to do some increases. I have my 3 inches of purl rows for my brim. I can start in on my first knit row to start the main stockinette portion of our hat. So we're just going to starting on that needle 1, going to do a knit stitch. And we're going to continue on knitting those knit stitches. So now that I've done my first row of knit stitches, I've started in on my second row, which will be our increase row. We're going to do a invisible increase, which is a make one. It's fairly simple to do, and it'll help give us a nice little bit of slouch in the main portion of our toque. So I'm going to knit 9 stitches, and then you can see here I've got my 2 knit stitches, and then I've got the little ladder between my 2 stitches. I'm going to pick that up, and I'm going to place it on my needle like so. So it forms a loop. I'm going to take my needle and going in through the back of that stitch, I'm going to knit it so that I've twisted that loop and created something that kind of looks like a knit stitch. So again, knit another 9 stitches. Grab that little ladder that was made from our last row, throw it over your needle, go into the back. Sometimes it's easier to just kind of wrap around or pick it up however you can. Pop your needle in like an X and knit through the back of the loop. If we counted properly, it should take us to the end of that first needle. So we're going to pick up the ladder that's after that first stitch because obviously we're magic looping, so it's right there. Just want to make sure it's from the row before, that first knit row. And again, in through the back, knitting through the back of the loop. And now you've increased 4 stitches on needle 1. I'm going to flip it around. It should be a little bit easier now that you have those 3 inches of purl. And you're going to repeat the same thing on needle 2, knitting 9, and doing a make 1 until you get to the end. So hopefully you've gotten to this part easily. Hopefully you have something that looks like this. Remember to keep knitting in stockinette until you get about 9 inches in total, 6 inches of your stockinette, and we'll come back and we will do our decreases and finish off our toque. So I'll see you in part 2. Happy knitting!